Hey, 13, here we go. So, where did we get to? Yeah, we're still on this skill acquisition, skill learning. The last podcast looked at stages of learning, the old cognitive, associative, and autonomous. We looked at the types of practice. There was the massed versus distributed. There was the whole part whole. There was the drill versus problem solving or discovery. And there was also the mental versus the physical. So let's move on now. Let's have a look at the factors. What things actually affect the way that we learn? What things are there? I know that I was guilty. You got me, fair cop. I was guilty at school. I was always... I still am, actually. My wife still uses the phrase. They reckon I've got selective attention. Have you had that said to you before? Oh, selective attention. And selective attention is actually... it's the ability to focus just on the aspects of the skill or the environment that are relevant to you. Okay? So things that are irrelevant, you basically blank out, you blot out. So, as my wife would say, you know, when I'm listening to her, I hear things like words like dinner and would I like a drink? But I don't hear words like can you go and put the washing on? And would you like to mow the garden? So that's my selective attention. But let's apply it to sport now. So in terms of golf, when a golfer stands up on the tee, he's not thinking about, oh, that cloud's nice, what a funny shape that is, looks like Mickey Mouse's head. He's not thinking about the bird that's flying by. He's not thinking about the car in the background and what colour it is and what make it is. He's being very selective with his attention. So he's basically concentrating purely on the things that will affect the performance of his skill. Okay? So the difference between selective attention of an athlete who's achieved mastery, so at the top end of that kind of autonomous level, compared with a novice, what we could argue is that at the autonomous phase, that athlete has learnt to selectively only apply attention to things that really influence his movement or his skill, whereas the novice will be thinking about other things, and the other things will be clouding his judgment and clouding his performance. So what factors might actually influence our ability to selectively attend to information? Well, our arousal level, and don't think sex, but I know it's exactly what you're thinking. We're talking about arousal, and we'll talk more about that in a moment, I'll explain, but it's nothing to do with sex. Also, the amount of experience that we have in a sport will basically, you know, our experience in that sport will affect our ability to selectively attend to the information or not. So the more experienced you are, then obviously you can be very selective with what you do and don't focus into. Novice performers, those of us in the cognitive stage of a skill, basically look at most things. Right, well, let's get on to the exciting stuff, because I've mentioned the word arousal, and now you lot are aroused. So let's talk about arousal. We basically get what's called under-arousal. And how do we basically kind of identify that in athletes? Now, under-arousal is when you're basically overly relaxed. Okay, therefore you don't produce your optimum skill performance. If you're bored, if you're disinterested, if there's a lack of motivation, we would class that player or that performer as being under-aroused. They're not really up for it. We talk about players getting into the zone. This is what they mean, okay? If you're under-aroused, you are not in the zone. But equally so, we can be over-aroused, and we can go beyond the zone. Okay, so over-arousal is basically being overstimulated. Okay, so excessive nervousness, fear, anxiety, tension. Okay, you see some players completely lose it. Okay, so in the professional game, cricket's terrible. You know, the old wicket keeper stands behind the batsman, does a bit of sledging, starts trying to wind up the batsman. Okay, so hopefully if they wind people up, or you see it in football, David Beckham getting sent off, you know, he got wound up in the World Cup. Wayne Rooney got wound up. The players then lash out, they get over-aroused, and then bang, they're gone. So two very, very clever people in America looked at this, and one guy was called Yerkes, and the other guy was called Dodson. And Yerkes and Dodson basically came up with this inverted U theory of arousal. And basically, if you think about, you know, an inverted U, an upside-down U, and they basically said that at the top of that U, okay, they're like a bridge, right at the peak, that's your optimum arousal. If you are under-aroused, then your performance goes down. Okay, so let's pretend I've drawn it up on the whiteboard in front of you, a nice big bridge shape. Optimal arousal is at the peak. Okay, so we've got performance kind of running up the axes on our left, and we have arousal running across the axes at the bottom. Now, under-arousal means that we will not perform as well as we should do. Equally so, if we get over-aroused, then we go beyond our optimal, and our performance goes down the other side. But we do need some form of arousal to actually get us to the optimal arousal. It always used to make me laugh, they used to show you the American footballers, or even rugby players, before a game, you kind of get their kind of shot in the players' changing room, and you see guys slapping each other and banging their heads against walls and kicking things. What they're trying to do in that phase, they're trying to basically get themselves aroused. They're trying to get their game face on. They're trying to get into that zone. If they can get aroused, then basically they'll perform better. So the optimal level of arousal for a beginner will be lower than a skilled person. Okay? Because for a beginner, it's quite stressful trying to learn something, so you get over-aroused quite quickly. The more confident you become, the more autonomous you become, okay, the more arousal you're going to need to get you into that same state. So just be aware of that. Let's have a look at another factor that will affect our performance, and that is our past experience and our transfer of learning. Anyone heard of those before? Past experience, transfer of learning. Past experience obviously speaks for itself. If you've actually done that skill before, even if it was years ago, just like I said in the last podcast about riding a bike, you might have done that skill a long, long time ago, but it actually stays within your neural memory. Okay? So basically, past experience has a huge advantage when learning a new skill. Also, transfer of learning. Okay, it's quite funny when you see some people, I call them sport billies, where they basically can almost do anything. But when I actually analyse it, it's my friends who are kind of good at golf are also good at hockey. I find that quite interesting. My friends who are good at tennis are good at badminton. There are certain skills that transfer across into different sports. And, similar skills can be used for badminton, for tennis, all those racket sports, squash. I think about Mr. Bolland here, a very good squash player, very good badminton player. Okay, he's not bad at tennis. So there is, there's a real link. You can transfer your skills from one sport to another sport where there are similarities. Another factor that can affect our learning is speed. Speed versus accuracy. That's always a good one. Speed versus accuracy. Because when we concentrate on learning a skill at speed, our accuracy goes down. It tends to decrease. However, when we concentrate on accuracy, when we learn a skill, our speed decreases. Let me say that again. When we concentrate on learning a skill at speed, accuracy decreases. When we concentrate on accuracy in learning a skill, our speed decreases. Okay? So just think about that the next time you're learning a skill. If we try and learn it fast, okay, then our accuracy goes down. Think about you lot at the driving range, thinking you can just get up there and hit it as hard as you can. Your accuracy will go down. If we concentrate on accuracy, then our speed of learning tends to go down. Also, another factor would be the quality of feedback that we're receiving. Okay, we've already seen that there are many different types of feedback. That was in the first podcast. Ultimately, they're basically all designed to lead a change in our performance, okay, for the better. So, and as a coach or as a learner, feedback should be suited to the level of the player. It's no good giving them high-tech coaching if they're only at the cognitive level. They should direct attention to only one or two aspects. You don't want to work on too much, and that's the problem some of you have had with your golf swings. You're trying to work on too much. Maybe take one or two of the subroutines and work on those. And this feedback, the quality of feedback, visual or physical, okay, really, really important. Another thing we can do to affect our learning is to vary the practice. We hate getting bored. Think back to those principles of training. We spoke about tedium. Okay, if we vary the practice, it can only be positive. If we do the same thing over and over, we get bored, it gets repetitive, we lose motivation, we want to give up. So good coaches will put on lots of different skill sessions, will mix the program up a bit, that will help us improve our learning. Okay, if it's going to be boring, if it's very, the same old day in, day out, that will actually affect our learning because our levels of motivation go down. Well, that's about it for now, team. So we've been through, in the last 3 podcasts, everything that you just need to know, ready for your task 3. And just recently we've looked at stages of learning, types of practice, and the factors that affect your learning. So hopefully you've listened to these, you've got a rough idea of where you're going. Don't forget, your green book is a good resource. I'm a great resource. Podcasts are a great resource. The internet is a great resource. Your peers are a superb resource. Okay? Anyway, take good care, people. We'll see you soon. Love you loads. As always, bye.